Principles should guide how we train. Shouldn't be what the cool new fad is, what Jimmy had great success with. It should be guided by principles and things that have stood the test of time that we know to be true and have a lot of evidence of being true. So one of those things is we need to have great control of our movement patterns before we start doing really challenging things. So the first step for most people is going to be about motor control. It's going to be about owning every aspect of a movement. We can pause at any point, we can get in a very specific position, and we can do a good amount of work with not such a heavy load. When we have owned that phase of motor control, it's appropriate to start moving into muscle endurance. Muscle endurance is where it's going to be maybe a little bit more challenging of work. Maybe the tempo's a little bit quicker, but the focus now is on doing a lot more reps. So those last couple reps, we start getting close to failure, not because it's necessarily heavy, but because we've done a lot of repeated work. Once we have gone through a phase of muscle endurance, well, it's time to get into strength endurance. This isn't gonna be the heaviest thing we could possibly be doing, but it's gonna be pretty darn heavy. And then eventually, hopefully I'm strong enough here to do it, you warm up, it's time for some absolute strength work. I personally would define that as any sort of movement where we are using about 70% of the muscle's contractile potential or more. So this is true strength training. A lot of times people think, well, if I'm using weights, I'm doing strength training. That's not inherently true. If I'm pressing 2.5 pounds, for me, that's probably not strength training. So eventually, I am going to get into some absolute strength work. Right. And you can see just in the sheer effort in my face that was a lot harder than all the 3 other previous phases of what I did. Motor control, muscle endurance, strength endurance, eventually into absolute strength work. And then you don't need to live in absolute strength work for the rest of your life. Like the snake eating its tail, you can come back around into motor control, back into muscle endurance, back into strength endurance, and then some more absolute strength work. Fantastic model for not always beating up the body with really heavy weights and making sure that we're moving in a great manner with motor control. And we can do more and more reps through muscle endurance, a little bit harder contractions with strength endurance work, and eventually earn the right to do really tough contractions. Give it a shot.